And I want you to start off by imagining something. I want you to picture yourself living in a peaceful town where life is pretty easy. You have beaches, you have parks, a river, and children have plenty of space to run free. But what the people in this idealistic town don't realise is that the military is literally showering them in chemicals. Most people in this town have no idea that chemicals are falling from above on a regular basis, but there are some who have noticed strange clouds in the sky. Clouds that look like normal contrails from commercial aircraft, but the only difference is that these trails don't disappear quickly. Instead, they linger for up to an hour as the chemicals slowly fall upon the town below. Does that sound like science fiction to you? Well, my guest tonight is convinced that Port Macquarie is among many towns across the planet where this frightening scenario is truly happening frequently. Now, you may never have heard of chemtrails before. I certainly hadn't until recently. But once the facts are presented to you, you can't help but start to feel just a little bit uneasy. And yes, the idea of the government dumping chemicals on us from high above is fairly easy to dismiss as nonsense. I mean, why on earth would they do such a thing? But it doesn't take much reading before the evidence starts to stack up. And if you've ever noticed an oddly shaped cloud in the sky above Port Macquarie or Wauchope, then you may well have witnessed a chemtrail, which is a massive blast of chemicals dumped on us from a high altitude aircraft. Now, before you cast off this idea as science fiction, I urge you to listen to my guest and our discussion tonight. Jeff Gardner will be joining us in the Two Way FM studios, and what he has to say, whether you choose to believe it or not, is compelling. Jeff Gardner is our guest tonight and on the It's Time to Talk program, and as always, throughout our discussion, you are more than welcome to call in and add your comments or your questions. In fact, we'd love to hear them, and we'll certainly pass them on to Jeff here in the studio. The number is 6585 2233. Don't just listen, participate. Chemtrails. That's CHEMTRAILS, chemtrails. I hadn't heard of them either. You're listening to the It's Time to Talk program right here on the best station on the holiday coast. That's 2AFM. Jeff Gardner, welcome to the It's Time to Talk program.
Thank you, Tim.
I want to start off by saying congratulations, because it takes a lot of guts to come on a radio show and talk about what you're going to talk about tonight, chemtrails, which is really a topic which, for people who are, I suppose, a bit closed-minded, very easy to mock something like this and to dismiss it as sort of like an alien type thing or a conspiracy theory. So really, I really do appreciate you coming on, because it takes guts, and I'm fully aware of what courage it takes to come onto this program and talk about something like chemtrails. Can I ask, why have you decided, though, to come and talk about chemtrails and discuss it?
Yeah, well, that's a very valid point, Tim. Basically, it's not for obviously for profit or for fame, because I mean this sort of thing that you're trying to expose, something like chemtrails, is not going to really attract fame. It's going to attract criticism, if anything. So my real gut feeling behind why I am doing this is basically to wake humanity up to what's actually going on in the world today. I used to watch the sky a lot when I was young, and I used to sort of look at the clouds, and and as you do when you're young, you see angels and animals and things in the clouds, and it came a couple of years ago. I came to the realisation that the clouds weren't the same as what they used to be. There was a lot of reflectivity about them. They actually, if you look at some of the clouds on days where I say that they are actually spraying, you see a lot of green and salmon coloured clouds, which you never ever used to see. You see a lot of lines, massive lines in the sky, straight lines that you never used to see. When I was young, I can remember seeing contrails in the sky at a very high height, but they were only ever pencil thin, and they always evaporated.
Okay, well, let's go right back to the beginning, because what you're saying is certainly intriguing, but we need to start off, first of all, we need to sort out the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail. And as I understand it, I'll take the contrail one if that's all right with you. As I understand it, a contrail is your basic trail that a commercial or an aircraft will leave behind. And we're all aware of that. When we see a plane travelling across the sky, we see a trail behind it, and that trail dissipates fairly quickly, usually.
It does.
Apparently, I looked it up, and even in the Guinness Book of Records, The longest a contrail has lasted was something like 40 minutes.
Yes.
So generally, though, they disappear about 5 minutes or so. Not very long at all.
That's right, mate. Yeah.
But explain to us what a chemtrail is.
If I can just sort of elaborate on the
Sure.
contrail part of it to start off with, just so people can realise or to know sort of scientifically how they can tell if it is a contrail or not. Basically, contrails at a height of 30 to 35,000 feet, which is cruising altitude, the exhaust from the jet engine has got water vapour in it. When the jet fuel is burnt off, water vapour is left. Now, if there's a temperature of minus 35 degrees at 35,000 feet, you will get a contrail forming. That is contrail science.
And it usually is very cold
proven.
up there too.
It is.
Yep.
It is very cold, and people don't realise it. They think they're down on the earth, and it's a hot day, but it's actually quite cold.
Yep.
A lot different up at that particular height. And basically, I'll lead into the chemtrail side of things now, because basically the trails that I'm seeing now, the long horizon to horizon trails, don't last a few seconds or up to a minute. They actually stay in the sky for hours and hours on end. And I've actually seen planes actually laying these trails, and they're reflective. They're not actually water vapour. If they were water vapour, the sun would actually evaporate them.
But a chemtrail, what is it? Obviously, it's a chemical trail. That's what
right.
chemtrail is short for. And what chemicals are we talking about?
Well, the sort of chemicals we're talking about, Tim, is things like aluminium, reflective aluminium particles, and we're talking submicron particles. You're also talking about barium, which is is used in the X-ray industry. People actually take barium meal, they actually drink it to it, and it's actually reflective. So when they actually X-ray the person, they can actually see where the actual barium's gone. So it's actually a radioactive type product. You've also got things like, and this is quite weird, desiccated blood cells, which are frozen blood cells. Now, the idea or the concept behind why people think that these are in the actual trails is for propagation of viruses, for testing new pathogens on the general population, mate.
Some people listening will be like me, quite gobsmacked by what you've just said there. If you are saying that these are the chemicals in the chemtrails, I'm assuming that they have analysed some of these chemicals at some stage?
They have, yeah. There's been a lot of independent tests done by a lot of different chemtrail sites, and also leading people like Rosalind Peterson over in America at Arizona Skywatch, also Bridget, and they have actually got independent tests done by them. They've tried through the normal agencies like the FAA and the environmental agencies. They won't touch the subject at all. They won't even broach it with them, and they will refuse to actually test any of the samples. So they have to go independently to an independent laboratory to actually get them tested. And these are the results they're seeing constantly, time in, time out.
Perhaps in America, where the military, there's a lot of secrecy and cover-ups, and America seems to be known for that sort of thing. But here in Port Macquarie, you're saying above the skies of Port Macquarie, you've seen chemtrails, and you regularly see them.
Yep, all the time. Only the last couple of days. Today, you couldn't see much at all because it was quite cloudy, but the last couple of days pre that, there were quite a few chemtrails in the sky, and even a friend of mine in Warhope only last night actually texted me and told me at 4 o'clock there were quite a few massive ones out the back of her place. And this is Warhope.
Well, exactly, and that's what's frightening about this. We're such a family community, basically, and when you think of children playing on the beach and on the parks, and you're suggesting that chemicals are falling down from the sky. Why would the government be doing this?
It's a multi-level, multifaceted type situation, Tim. So it's not easy to explain in a 45-minute time frame, but there's various reasons. One reason which is talked about is the fact that they're doing this to keep people sick, to actually create more virus, to create more sickness in the world. You're not only talking about the military, you're talking about pharmaceutical companies which are involved in this situation, aeronautical companies, and the military, of course. It's all tied in with this. So basically, you've got things like if you have a sample that's got a desiccated blood cell in it, how would that blood cell get into the air otherwise? It just doesn't. I mean, blood cells just don't evaporate up into the air. They've got to come from some sort of chemical or some sort of mixture which is actually sprayed out into the atmosphere.
Even if you could prove that chemtrails do exist, and I know that that might irritate you a bit because I know you're saying there are studies that have proved it already, but the theories about why chemtrails are being poured upon us,
Yep.
they must just be theories, surely. I mean, it'd be very difficult to prove.
There's a lot of there's a lot of documentation. If you actually go into Google, go to Google Patents, go to weather modification patents, there is actually hundreds and hundreds of patents that have been lodged by various different countries around the world. And basically, it's a initially in the first years around the early 1980s, it was a matter of testing. You saw the odd chemtrail here and there, but as time has progressed through the 90s and certainly into the year 2000 and above, the operations have actually magnified, and we're basically looking at open air operations now that are quite easy for people to see in the sky what's going on.
Do we have any idea when chemtrails first started to be noticed, or maybe when they first started to be used?
Yeah, early 1980s. If you look back, you can look back to the Vietnam War, for example. They used a product called Agent Orange, which I'm sure you would be familiar with. That was actually sprayed from spray devices from planes. That was to basically deforest the area around to stop the Viet Cong from being able to hide or to actually get away from the Allies. But the problem with that is it was actually a very highly toxic chemical, and that's why a lot of Australian veterans and a lot of veterans in general have suffered from rashes, breathing, upper lower respiratory breathing problems, this sort of stuff. So you can even look back at as far as the 1960s when they first started to actually test biologicals on people.
Do you have any idea how regularly do you think these chemicals have been dropped on us? Perhaps here in Port Macquarie and Wauchope?
Look, to be honest, I would guesstimate, and it might sound horrifying, but I would guesstimate at least 3 to 4 times a week. So we're not talking like once or twice. See, the whole idea is, as well, to another facet of it, is they're trying to actually create artificial cloud and to have that medium in the atmosphere constantly. So to actually do that, if you only did it once a week or once a month, it wouldn't stay there. So they actually need this aerosol in the atmosphere all the time to actually carry out their testing and military operations.
Cloud seeding is very popular at the moment, and it's very expensive, and it's all about breaking the drought. For those people who don't know, cloud seeding is a genuine experiment that is, well, it's not an experiment, it's actually something that's happening where basically you seed clouds so that rain falls on particular areas of the country.
That's right.
Is there any way that this chemtrails and all the chemicals that you're talking about being dropped on us perhaps has been confused? Maybe it's something to do with cloud seeding? Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up, Tim, because that is a common misconception with the general population, is it's only cloud seeding. Now, cloud seeding is basically what they do is they drop from a spray system silver iodine, which is a salt. And basically what it does is it creates a nuclei for the actual rain or the water vapour that collects inside the clouds. You get more nuclei that you get to create clouds, the more rain you will actually achieve. But to be out for cloud seeding to work, you have to have clouds. Now, the thing is, I have seen on many, many days that have started off beautiful, crystal clear blue skies, no clouds whatsoever. All of a sudden you get 5, 6, 7, up to 10, 12 jets flying through the sky in close unison, which is actually highly illegal, and laying these thick, long trails. So to actually cloud seed, you need to actually have cloud to start off with.
Is it possible, among your theories about why this is happening, that the government is trying to protect us, maybe from something like global warming, or perhaps you suggested before that they're trying to keep us sick, maybe they're trying to inoculate us? I'm
glad you raised that point as well too, Tim. There's a lot of misinformation out there in the market, and not only from the military or from governments, but also from other people on chemtrail sites, because they don't really understand what is actually going on. For example, one proposed idea is that from geoscientists, this is, and there have been documented like commercial radio cases in Australia where they have documented that if you actually spray a particular reflective metal into the atmosphere, you can create a sunscreen to actually stop the solar radiation and to stop global warming from actually happening. What will actually happen, but if you look at the science, is it will actually increase the warming of the world, because it will not allow those greenhouse gases and that heat to escape.
It's an amazing conversation. I can't believe that I'm having it, in one sense, because until a few days ago I had no idea about chemtrails, and the prospect of somebody pouring chemicals on me and having had it done to me for years and years, as you suggest, is frightening.
It is.
And that's why you're talking to us, because you think people need to be aware of it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Did it worry you when you put your hand up to come on tonight's show that you might receive criticism and even be mocked for saying something like this?
Oh, look, Tim, I suppose I'm one of those sort of lucky people that I don't really sort of care what people think in that respect. I mean, I have my own opinions, and I don't accept all information that I see on these sites. I basically take the information in like a computer. I take the information in, I look at the information, what resonates with me, what actually seems true to me, I keep. The rest I discard, because there is a lot of disinformation out there.
There are a massive number of people across the planet who do believe in this.
That's true.
And
that's true.
I will also go further as to say that there is a lot of evidence that this is not crackpot stuff.
That's right.
There is stuff that is unexplained, and when you look at it carefully, logic doesn't have a reason for it, except for maybe something like what you're explaining.
Yep.
In the meantime, if you'd like to call us at 2AFM on the It's Time to Talk program, you can do that. Pass on a question or a comment, 6585 2233. We'd love to hear from you, because it's, like I say, a fascinating conversation. Our guest tonight is Jeff Gardner, who's talking about chemtrails. Chemtrails being things that you can see in the sky, which are, according to Jeff, chemicals that are being dropped on us by the military, presumably in conjunction with the government, for all kinds of reasons. We will go through some of those, Jeff, if that's all right with you. Some of the reasons that we've touched on it earlier, but some of the reasons that we might be being saturated with chemicals. I can barely bring myself to say that, because it's such a sickening thought.
It is, mate, it is.
But we've got here to deliberately make the planet heat up.
Well, that sort of leads into a whole other area. It's to do with global warming. Now, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of the public, which I believe, basically that the public has been brainwashed by commercial media to believe that man-made global warming and CO2 is actually the reason for climate change. What I say is the only constant with climate change is change. The climate constantly changes. Now, if they want to push their CO2 reduction scheme and their CO2 capping, they need to be able to, for the planet to actually show that it's actually heating up.
One of the other theories, to keep the population sick and experiment with new and old viruses.
It's been met. There are many actual documented cases in England, in Australia, and also in America, where the government or the military has actually experimented on people using different viruses and different pathogens to actually see the effects of the population without the population even knowing. After a few years of disclosure, when they can actually release the information, that's when it all comes out. The information's on the net, people.
This one fascinates me. The chemicals being dropped on us here in Port Macquarie, Wauchope, all over the world, for mass mind control and mass manipulation of the brain, like subliminal messages and suggestions.
Yes, that's a very...
Vote for Kevin Rudd.
Yes, that's a very, very multi-level and very, very big area that we actually get into there. Basically, you're looking at a system which is called HAARP, which is HAARP. That's basically stands for... Sorry, Tim, won't be a sec.
No, you're fine.
High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It's a massive amount of antennas that are set out in a particular area. You're looking at the antennas actually operate on between 1 and 30 megahertz, which is actually, coincidentally enough, the same actual frequency that our brains actually operate on. Now, what basically they do with how chemtrails ties in with it, they put particulate into the atmosphere like chemtrails. They actually use the antennas to actually insert a frequency into the trail, and that actually electrifies the actual trail itself. And basically what it enables them to do is, if they put trails all over the place, those trails will hold that frequency. Therefore, they can basically tell en masse humanity what to actually do, how to think, what's going on in the world, everything. It's actually, there's been a lot of work done on subliminal messages in advertising, for example. Same sort of scenario, because in advertising, when you're watching TV, when you're listening to the radio, you're actually deciphering, your brain is deciphering a frequency, a megahertz rating, and that's exactly the same way that these HAARP antenna systems operate on.
Okay, but who's trying to send us subliminal messages?
That would be, well, a combination of it's a military and government operation. Basically, I mean, any government around the world likes to be able to control a population. Now, what better way to do it other than easy forms like TV? TV is a classic example. Radio, media, advertising, any of that sort of stuff is a traditional way to actually train the population to think a certain way. You have to have this product. You won't look good unless you buy this product. You've got to. You will feel better about yourself if you buy this TV. It's all subliminal messages that are put into there, because with a TV, there's not actually someone inside the TV. It's a frequency that our brains actually decipher, and that's how we can actually see the pictures that we see on the television.
Okay, well, we've been through 5 theories already. The last main one that I can see why chemicals were being dropped on us regularly is to instigate environmental sustainability, which basically is they're trying to genocide, like you say.
Depopulation. That's what it's
all
all
about. So that we
about.
don't overpopulate ourselves.
Many, like a few years ago, back in the 80s, a lot of the globalists and a lot of the environmentalists talked about, not so much in the terms of genocide, but they talked about depopulation. The planet cannot survive where there's too many people on the planet. This, I know for a fact, is absolutely rubbish, because the Earth in itself, it's been proven scientifically, is actually growing. So we're not going to run out of space on the Earth for people. Basically, what they do nowadays, rather than talk about depopulation, because it gets a lot of people's hackles up, because they think, well, why are you going to try and kill us all? They talk about environmental sustainability. Mate, it is exactly the same thing.
Let me put this to you. We've just gone through. You're suggesting that chemicals have been dumped on us regularly, even here in Port Macquarie and Wauchope.
Yep.
We've got 5 theories here that we've covered, and there's a lot more. One, to deliberately make the planet heat up, to keep the population sick, to experiment with weapon systems for mass mind control, instigating environmental, like basically depopulating the planet.
Yep.
Can one dumping of chemicals do all of those things? Like, why are there so many different theories? Are they all been put in action, or are these all just theories? No,
well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because basically, if you look at the trails, they actually vary in colour and size. Now, I have actually seen on the net as well too, planes actually spraying trails that are actually 4 different colours.
So you're not saying different chemicals to match these different reasons you're talking about?
Yep.
It gets more frightening, Jeff.
It does, because if you're talking about things like keeping people sick with viruses, stuff like that, you've got to have desiccated blood in the trails. If you're talking about exacerbating global warming or creating global warming, then you're talking about reflective products like aluminium oxide.
To give some credibility to what you're saying, there has been increases in modern day ailments, like even skin rash. Everyone knows this. When you go into a school, for example, these days, there are allergies to all kinds of things, and people are often saying, "Oh, it's funny. In my day, there didn't used to be this sort of allergies to everything."
Influenza.
And
massive outbreaks of influenza,
respiratory problems,
upper and lower breathing problems,
just all those kinds of modern day ailments. And you think that this could be an explanation for those?
Oh, definitely. I don't believe that. I mean, let's face it, our society is a very toxic society in the amount of artificial preservatives and products that we actually ingest into our bodies without even realising what they actually do. This is just another facet of the control mechanism. I mean, that's why we're told we need fluoride in our water. That's why we're told we need these antidepressant drugs to get ourselves better. That's why we're told we need the vaccines to make sure that we don't get all these diseases. It's all about control, and the chemtrail side of it is just another facet of that control.
Let me put all the cynical suggestions to you.
Yep.
What you're saying, that you can look up in the sky and you can often see these chemtrails.
Yep.
There'd be people out there saying, well, no, that's just an unusual looking cloud.
But to my way of thinking, mate, I've never ever in my life, and like I said, I was an avid sky watcher all the way through my younger years. I have never ever seen any explanation for years previous to, say, the mid-'80s, a long completely clean cloud, and what I'm talking about is a completely flat cloud. There's no bumps. A normal cloud has sort of bumps and sort of depressions. These things are just completely straight.
I have to admit that I've even well before I knew about chemtrails, so I'm talking at least 6 months ago, I remember looking up on a series of nights in Port Macquarie and thinking, that cloud there stretches from right above my head all the way, it looks like, probably to Coffs Harbour. That's as far as the eye could see, basically. And it was a long, straight cloud.
That's right.
It didn't disappear, so it couldn't have been from a plane, but it looked like it could have been from a plane. And then it started to spread. I watched these sort of clouds over a number of nights, and they start to spread.
They do.
And I did think it was unusual, and I put it down to just an environmental coincidence, I suppose. But once I started seeing them night after night, are you sure there's not another scientific explanation? If I had an environmental scientist sitting here, they'd probably go, but that was just...
Yeah, that's a valid comment, but I must say that I have not only seen these trails after they've been laid, I've actually seen the planes laying the trails, and I've actually stood there and filmed and documented the trails getting larger and larger, expanding, not decreasing, not evaporating, and these trails originally started off as pencil-thin lines.
And people can see those videos on YouTube where you've got them, and we'll certainly mention that, so stay tuned. We'll mention that in a few minutes, because we're coming. I just want to put a few other cynic explanations to you. Dumping fuel, what about, could these things that you're seeing in the sky just be commercial airliners dumping their fuel?
Definitely not, Tim, because if you've ever seen a video, and this is a good idea for people to do as well too, maybe jump on YouTube and actually look at videos of airplanes dumping fuel. Now, if you see that actually happening, what actually happens is it's dumped out of the bottom of the fuel injections either in the wings or at the bottom of the plane, but it falls directly straight down. It doesn't actually form a long trail. There's no particulate to it. It's just, all it is basically fuel. So fuel being with gravity, it'll just drop straight to the ground. It will not actually sit up in the air, and it will not last for miles and miles and miles.
Okay, is it possible that it's a more harmless military experiment or trialling things like to stop radars detecting them and stuff like that? Could it be something like that? Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that one as well too. That's another misinformation that's circulating around on the net. There's a thing called military chaff. Now, basically what it is it's reflective strips that are actually ejected from military planes for the purposes of basically creating invisibility to enemy radar. Another purported reason that is said by the military, it's also to stop other nations from spying on cities via satellite. Now, if this was the case, then why can you go onto Google Earth, and why can you actually access cloud penetrating radar and actually be able to see your own home?
And the final thing that a cynic might say to you is, do you notice these chemtrails at the same time every day? Are you sure it's not something to do with the certain light reflecting on the clouds and creating illusions, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. It actually happens 24/7. I've seen trails at night time. I've seen trails first thing in the morning when I've got up. I've seen trails at lunchtime. I've seen trails halfway through the afternoon. So there is a system to it. I believe there is a system to the operations, because there has to be, because they're trying to weaponise the earth, or create a certain, change the atmosphere.
Okay.
So basically, if they were doing it at one particular time every single day, or if I saw them at one particular time every single day, you could say, okay, that could be something like Aurora Borealis or some sort of cloud form effect.
All right. Well, Jeff, we're coming up to time now, but we need to take the listeners through, because it's alarming stuff, so they need to go and look for themselves, basically. Yes. And there are some videos that I've seen on YouTube, some of them posted by you, of chemtrails above Port Macquarie. People need to look at these things before they dismiss this. They need to go and look at it and read about it themselves. So where can they go on the internet to find out about this stuff? Okay, I've got a list of different places now. The absolute best one that they can start off with is a site called www.carnicom.com. So it's CARINCOM.com.
You have also got a guy by the name of Scott Stevens. He is actually an ex-CNN weatherman and meteorologist. This guy has come clean. He knows how the weather operates, how clouds are formed. That was what he actually did because he was a weatherman with CNN. What he saw over a period of time from the mid-80s onwards started to disturb him. So then he had to come out and speak out about it. He is a very, very good scientific reference point for the people out there.
And a huge vote of credibility there to it too, because he's a weatherman. He knows about these sort of things.
Now, there's also there's an absolute minefield of websites out there. The best thing people can do if they want to get onto any websites is basically go to Google, type in chemtrails, and just watch the list come up.
Most importantly, these videos of the chemtrails above Wauchope and Port Macquarie.
Yep.
They go to YouTube. What username can they, or what do they type in to find it? As far as I know, they type in chemtrails Port Macquarie.
Yep, that's right. They can do that. They can also, if they're on, if they go onto YouTube, all they need to type in is Lithgow Town. So it's LITHCOWTOWN. And that'll take them directly to the Yahoo group that I manage. It has got a direct link also to my website, which is Concerned Aussie Sit. But they can scroll through all the videos that I've shot in Port Macquarie, and also in Wauchope. My parents have shot video footage in Brighton, Victoria. There's footage on there that a friend of mine, Sentient Sight, on YouTube actually created, which is Chemtrail Emissions Australia, or Aerosol Emissions Australia wide, which shows multiple places around Australia that people have sent chemtrail shots to him.
Okay. Well, like I said at the beginning, it's a fascinating subject. Not just fascinating, a frightening subject.
It is.
I like to try to keep an open mind about these things. This one, I'd almost prefer to think that it's not true, because
That's
if
right.
it is true, it's just monumental.
That's the thing. And see, a lot of people basically, even if they're presented with the information, they don't want to know. And because it is very scary. I mean, they want to just stick their head back in the sand and just believe that it's not actually going on. I mean, who wants to believe that their government or their military are doing this to them?
Like I said, you're very brave for coming in, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback from this. You're more than welcome to give me a call now, 65852233. But for now, we're going to play a very short documentary from a United States channel. A couple from America have documented over the past 5 to 10 years, I believe it is, their experiences with chemtrails. Both very intelligent people, both big believers in this, and like Jeff here in the studio, believe this is a conspiracy and a cover-up, and one that people need to be much more aware of. So take a listen to this. Jeff, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Tim.
Hopefully we'll be having you back. I'm sure we will have you back at some stage, because this is just the tip of the iceberg.
That would be great. Yeah, because like I said, Matt, it is very, very multi-level, so we need probably a few sessions to actually get all the information out there to people.
We do, but thank you for the crash course, and
thank you.
You're listening to the It's Time to Talk program.
We're talking to you here from beautiful Maple Bay on Vancouver Island.
Bill's wife, and I was a school teacher for my working years, and now I'm happily retired.
My name is Bill Abram. I'm a retired school teacher too.
I believe we began watching almost when they began to show up here on the island in late 1998, and 1999 we became more aware of it because we saw articles about them in Ontario, in Espanola. The town of Espanola in Ontario had sued the government because they were having excessive drift down of aluminum, and rainwater had been tested, and it was far above levels of safety. So once we read that and knew that it was a real thing and we weren't just seeing contrails from normal airplanes, we began to watch very carefully. So that was after 99. The chemtrail, what we call chemtrails, is not the regular exhaust. It'll form, and it doesn't have to be into such cold air at all. At much lower levels, not so cold, and it sprays out, and it hangs there in the air. It doesn't disappear in a few minutes. It can spread out, get wider and wider, and it can last for hours. And I had asked him, what do you know about biological agents being in this spray? Because they had discovered the aluminum and I think barium at that time, and also some quartz, light quartz, all particulate that damages your respiratory system. At that time, he said that he didn't have knowledge of there being biological agents like bacteria and fungus and things of that nature. But we kept in touch then, and as Bill said, we went through investigating about the people who were having definite health problems and putting it down to fallout from the sky.
When we were investigating the Cryptococcus neoformans, and as Celia said, people develop nosebleeds. I did develop a brief nosebleed too at that time. I was trying to capture some of the fallout, and I spread a black tarp out on the lawn. After a day of it being out there, there was a filmy, talcum, very slippery surface all over the black tarp, which, was not normal for the tarp. In the years succeeding, the chemtrails seemed to get sometimes much thicker, and you could see fallout from the chemtrail. It would drift out, and trails would be hanging down as if it were dust falling from the sky.
To begin with, all the trails were long and they were crisscrossing like a checkerboard. But then 2 years ago, we'd start to see a big puff of white, and then all the fallout, the strands and the powder drifting down, sailing out over the sky, and the plane would go along and be another big puff. They were starting to puff it out. The other interesting thing with the long ones is that makes you realize they're not contrails following an airplane. They're going along and they're very solid and then just stop. They're just cut off. Either the tanker ran out of spray or for some reason, or you'll see it come along and then take a U-turn and head back, which no commercial aircraft, which is what the authorities tell us. It's just a commercial aircraft. Official response mainly can be summed up as denial. They send me wonderful page letters of explanation on what a contrail is. And I write back and say, I don't really need an explanation about contrails. I want you to find out, get busy, and find out what's in this chemical spray that's being spread out. But that's it from the Minister of Environment, the Minister of Defense, from the Center for Disease Control. Don't want to admit that there's anything going on. You can't help but wonder why so few people notice it to begin with. Sometimes when it's a very heavy day of it and we're in town, we'll say to somebody in the parking lot, look up, do you see what's up there? They never noticed it, hadn't a clue what it is, and really aren't all that alarmed when we tell them. And until we get the word spread widely, we won't have enough reaction to it. But we do put things in the paper, and I send out other information saying, call the government, call the Environment Department, tell them we don't want our skies covered with this. We've never been asked for permission to allow our blue skies to be covered.
You're listening to 2 FM and the It's Time to Talk program. It's frightening stuff, really, isn't it? Nosebleeds, skin rashes, respiratory problems, allergies, and all kinds of infections and viruses. Chemicals being dropped on us regularly from high altitude planes. And if you've got an explanation, I'd love to hear it. 6585 2233 is my number.